Sandy Faust. Here. Phyllis Torrance. Here. Rick Day.
Here.
Carrie Young. Here. Vincent Edmonds.
Here.
Joseph Molnix.
Here.
Scott Wilson.
Here.
James Comerford.
Here.
Okay, the next order of business is reading and approving the previous month's minutes, or previous, long time ago month's minutes.
I make a motion, we dispense of the reading and accept them as written.
I second the motion.
It's order.
Joe, could you pull Sandy's mic down a little bit?
Okay, we have no old business. New business. City of Peru Police Chief Michael Meeks will be discussing the parking issues the police force has come across in some streets in Oakdale, in the tree lawn, and areas that have been gravelled in the tree lawns.
Good evening.
Hi.
Okay. I've been told I'm getting ready to open a big can of worms here, so
Open them.
bear with me. Bear with me. As most of you will know, the city of Peru put up curbs in the Oakdale area here some time ago. I'm not sure how many years ago, but it's been some time ago now. And I'm assuming that was more for drainage. Maybe it's more for the look. I'm not sure, but I'm assuming more so for drainage. If we go away from that part of, if we don't think about Oakdale for a minute, and we go in like to the west end or the east end of town, any place that there's ever been a curb in the city of Peru, if someone has parked over that curb into the grassy area or the tree lawn, we've written them a ticket by this, because what the state law says is that when you park your vehicle, the right side of your vehicle must be within 12 inches of the curb. So we take it that if you're either further than 12 inches or you're going over the curb, then you're not adhering to the law, which allows us to write a ticket for parking in the tree lawn, which is a city ordinance. When we think about what we've endured in Oakdale for several years prior to the curbing, you never had curbs there. So we always felt as a police department, and some would disagree, but we always felt that if there was no curb, then that was just almost a free parking lane, however you wanted to park there. And I know that we also have city ordinances that state that if you're going to park in a grassy area, it must have gravel underneath it as well. You must park on gravel. So what we encountered here about a week and a half ago on day shift, we had one of our officers go out there, and it was somewhat of a neighborhood dispute. But what had happened was somebody parked in a tree lawn of the neighbor's tree lawn, and what they'd done is they had a dispute with their neighbor and decided they were going to back their car all the way up to the neighbor's bumper to where the neighbor couldn't get their vehicle out of their parking space, which is what sparked this right here. So the question, and I actually hit up, Mayor Greer holds a department heads meeting 2 times a month. And so we talked about this, and then we had the street department, traffic department, fire department, police department. So basically every department head, including Mayor Greer, was at this meeting, and I addressed them. And so Mayor Greer said, let's hit up you folks and kind of see if maybe we can come to some kind of conclusion as to how we need to proceed and how we need to maybe enforce that, or maybe we need to write a city ordinance of some sort. So I guess the main questions that I have are, when you go out into that area, you can see that some places, and just as Ms. Leffler put up there a little bit ago, some of the curbing out there is just maybe an inch, inch and a half high, but then some of it gets I didn't actually go out there and look at how high they are, but I've been told that some can be as high as 6, 8, maybe 9, 10 inches high. So obviously you need a big old truck to get over some of those. However, most of them are not that way. Most of them, I believe, are drivable. So my question for you then is, one, are we still going to allow them to park in those areas? And I guess the main thing is when you think about city streets, I can park in front of your house, you can park in front of my house, and there's nothing I can do about that. When you talk about a tree lawn that's owned by the city, maintained by the property owner, can I park in front of your house in your tree lawn, or can I not? Does the tree lawn belong to you? Does it belong to me? Does it belong to the city? And if it does, whoever it belongs to, what are we going to do about the parking issues? And then secondly, when you talk about, can they go over that tree lawn, or can they park in that tree lawn and also park facing the wrong direction? Because there is no curb parking there. They can't park in the street on the street side of the curb. They have to go over that curb, or basically there's just no parking out in that Oakdale area. So have fun. Trying to help me decide what we want to do here.
Yeah.
And I'll answer any questions I can, but I mean, that's
Okay.
kind of the nuts and bolts of what.
I'd like to address this. I have lived out there in Oakdale
for 62 years. Yes, we put in curbing. We do have city ordinances already in place. The police don't pay any attention to them. People,
Which ordinance, though?
anybody knows that drives an automobile, the passenger side always goes to the sidewalk. You drive, no left, right, no none of this business. They're out there, they will park in any direction on the street that they want to, rather than, just laziness is what I call it, rather than pull their car around the corner, maybe back up and face in the right direction. You can go down the street and you never know when somebody's going, from the opposite side of the street, it's going to come facing the wrong direction at you. Number one, Brucey, Marie, and I drew up an ordinance about this gravel issue and parking on grass and everything like that. It's an environmental issue, like he says. And people just come along now that they just threw gravel all over up in the grass wherever they wanted to, and they pull their cars up in any direction that they want to. You're not supposed to park oversized vehicles. I have a pontoon that sits out there on Jackson Street, big pontoon, sit there all the time, no weather, that it's usable and everything like that. They, on that side of the street, they park in any direction they want to park. No, there's curb, there's everything like that. Nobody pays any attention to any of this. You can't go anyplace else without parking that way that they do. They decide, well, we're going to angle park, okay? You don't decide you're going to angle park. You get a permit to do this. And when they were doing this, some of them were angle parking, pulling up part of their vehicle, set on the sidewalk, and in their parking out there, not on the street, pulled off the street, and do like, so they could park any amount of vehicles they wanted to park. There's one place that I can tell you, it's just a code enforcement ought to have taken care of this. He has as many as 13 automobiles pulled up in his backyard, which he has gravelled in. There's big equipment there, which is against the law to be there. These vehicles, he periodically moves some of them, and pretty soon some of them are gone. But pretty soon some else are replacing them. I've often wondered, not accusing anybody, because I don't know. I don't even know what kind of a job he has, whether drugs could ever enter into the person or not, peddling these cars like they peddle them like that.
Hey, Phyllis, is this relevant to the tree lawn?
No.
We need to
The direction of the parking is one of the issues, of people pulling in sideways, backwards, whatever. I think that's a safety issue. I think that's pretty black and white, the way that that should be. And now on the other thing, the only other thing that we're really discussing is, are we going to allow them to continue to park here, and what ordinances need to be changed so that's all covered? And it's in about 3 different places in the ordinance book that it's covered, so maybe it all needs to be combined to one.
How in-depth are we going to, how in-depth of a discussion are we having at this moment?
That's your decision.
I guess is my question. Because if this is just a discussion meeting, we're not really going to be settling anything anyway.
That's your
Because
choice.
this was, yeah, but wasn't this posted as a discussion?
It is posted as a discussion. It is because I don't believe it's not something that can be handled in one meeting.
Oh, no.
Because, I mean, there's
No.
different, there's many different places in the ordinance book. Like, if you look at a lot of different things, not just this, but this is one of them. If you're say they come across this and it gets sent upstairs to us and we start looking at our part of the ordinance book, our answer might be different than theirs. And we run across that all the time. That, to me, is something that needs combined, and everybody should get the same answer.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, what you typically find is that they will handle anything we'll handle anything up to the sidewalk, they handle anything from the sidewalk in, and then typically anything off the alley, they typically handle as well, if that helps you.
So what would it take to, say, decrease the tree line?
Well,
You know, if they've already got gravel and they're parking on part of it, then there's grass from there to the sidewalk, what would it take to say that the tree lawn is just the grass? Not the gravel, but the grass to the sidewalk? And now that road, in essence, has been extended, but it's for parking only?
yeah, I
And
drove
just
up there
leaving
the other
gravel.
day, Scott, and those tree lawns are exceptionally wide between the corner of the street and the sidewalk. And that's why I asked Todd, because if at one time we were going to actually widen those streets or whatnot.
Right, but that would save the expense of widening the street. We'll just call the end of the tree lawn there. The
That's-
gravel's already in place, that's parking only, and
Exactly.
then it's enforced as a parking issue to where it has to
Now-
be facing the right direction, that kind
Yeah, whether they're backwards or angle parked or something, then you guys would handle that. But as far as parking, there is no place to park up there.
I know, and that's why
mean,
it's hard to say you can't park there, and then,
The issue that you're having, though, is in our city ordinances, when they go to look at it, they're pulling over a curb to
That's
park
why I'm
there.
saying how hard
Therefore,
it is.
they're violating, and they
Right.
can't enforce it. That's what Phyllis is saying, it's
Well-
never enforced up there because it can't be.
And that's
You
because
can't
it's a
tell them
gray
they can't
area.
have anywhere to park. So it needs written in a way that the police department can enforce it, but it's written fairly so they still have somewhere to park. That's the issue you're really looking at.
that's why we could leave some of it the same way. You can't park on the tree lawn, but can we create it to where that tree lawn is now smaller
Or
on those properties?
Or can you create a part of the city ordinance that's covered in those specific areas and not other parts of town?
Yes, Jackson Street, so forth, and put those, and in one of the ordinances, there is parking in different areas, and it's listed in the ordinance. So, I mean, we could actually do that for that area.
But there's a lot of different areas. My dad lives on West Warren Street, and he
Boulevard.
parks technically on the tree lawn. He's got a gravel area right there on the road, because you can't park on the road, and they pull into that. So by rights, that's a tree lawn.
Okay, well,
Therefore, we're falling in that issue, not just in Oakdale.
No.
Other places.
On Boulevard, they actually have to park on the sidewalk on certain parts of.
Right. So, I mean,
so streets
Really?
under a certain width,
Or you could go a different route, which might open a big can of worms and just make it no parking.
I don't park there, so I'm fine with whatever.
Do you have some sense of the revenue that's
haven't.
generated from parking tickets? And if there are repeat offenders that you've given tickets to?
I would say on average, we write between 12 and 18 ordinances per month, and about $56 per ticket.
Okay.
is that in the disputed area that we're talking about, or is that citywide?
Citywide.
Yeah.
That's not.
And that can be anything. That can be parking issues, oversized vehicle issues. There's not a whole lot of ordinances that are out there that we write as far as pertaining to parking, but typically those are the ordinances that we're going to.
Okay.
Mike, do you have any
He's saying,
suggestions?
Vincent, they don't really have a way that they can, that's the problem, they can't enforce it. They don't write tickets in those areas normally because they'd be writing them to the whole city block.
Well, if you look at the church there on the corner of Chili and, I can't think, it's 2 streets down. They've actually paved in the tree lawn over there and putting handicap parking and so forth. So technically, if we tell the other people that they can't park on their gravels and stuff, this church is also in violation of that ordinance.
We have some friends that live in Oakdale. Quite a while ago, they came up to the courthouse or City Hall and asked permission to put asphalt down in the tree lawn. They had no curb. They were told, as long as there's no curb there, you can do it. So they now have gravel and asphalt, and it's very nice. You know, can't ask them to tear it
That's
out.
actually, I see that as correct, that's not the issue
you
we're
need
dealing with.
Jack
We're dealing with the issue where there is a curb.
Yeah.
That-
Right, because that's my
Right,
concern
because
too.
the
Those-
curb has
those-
been added.
Those people that maybe want to do that, but don't have the opportunity to do that because the curb is 8 inches high
on
or
the
6
s-
inches high.
it's
So are
right
we going
off of
to allow them?
Washington. They're on the
The city did a
corner
great
of
job of putting the curbs
Washington
in
and-
for better drainage. Are we now going to
Can you
take
ask
them?
the
No.
curb out to allow people to be able to do something like that? So you asked me my opinion. I don't know that I have one. And, you know, I know Mrs. Torrance is upset about us maybe not enforcing laws out there as well as maybe what she thinks we could or should. But the great thing about law enforcement is we do have some discretion, and so we are empathetic to the people out there that have parking issues. We don't want them to have to put gravel down in their backyard and mess up their backyard. So, yes, have we been lenient? Yes, have we not upheld the law maybe to the letter of the law as maybe she wishes we would? And I'm sure some other people wish we would. I'm sure that if I write a parking in a tree line on West Sixth Street, I'm sure they could drive out to Oakdale and say, this isn't fair. I shouldn't have my ticket when they get to do that out there. And that's the issue we have here today. And that's unfortunately what happened last week with that discussion. So that's kind of.
And that was because there was a curb placed there, though. So they're pulling over the curb and parking.
Correct, and it was gravelled all the way through. So that's the other issue too. What if I don't want to put gravel in front of my house, I just want to put grass, and I want my grass to stay nice because I park in the backyard. But
Right.
everybody else can park in front of their houses. Now someone wants to back into my grass because there's no parking on the street. And they do damage to my property, but there's no parking on the street, then who's responsible for the damage when I have to maintain it, but you get to park there because there's no parking on the street?
Do
Right.
you have a curb?
I do, no, I do not.
I used to have a curb.
I do. I
They
got curb.
paved over it, but it doesn't matter, it's irrelevant.
But I
So
agree-
what if they, could those people with the gravel, they got a curb, they got the gravel, could the homeowner pay to have the curb maybe cut at an angle so they have a drive into?
Are we gonna make a homeowner
And
pay
then all
for
of a
that?
sudden, well, it's either that or they don't get any parking or.
You're talking about maybe somewhat of a slight angle, so, because I know the main reason
Kinda
is the
make it a
drainage
drive.
issue that we have out there, so that we're not going backwards with maybe the drainage problems that we have.
Right.
Mike, if they were told that they can no longer park in the tree
I
line,
don't mind opening it.
how
I don't mind either.
wide is the road? Well, how wide are the roads to allow parking on both sides?
I don't, most of those streets wouldn't allow it.
I think that, last time I measured out there, the widest one's 24 feet.
Just, excuse me, Washington Avenue is wide
Right.
because,
Right, it is, yes.
yeah, it's wide because part of those homes there years ago, and when they was putting the Oakdale addition in, they made those streets wider, but their overall footage on their lots are shorter than like mine's 130. Some of them would only be maybe 90 or something like that. That's why Washington Avenue is a wide street. But when you go talking the width of the streets, look at them all over Peru. You got a wide on West 3rd Street, the rest of them aren't, but they still park there by the curbs. The curbs are there. They're not angle parking. They're not going up in every direction. They're not pulling heavy equipment and parking it there and leaving it.
Maybe,
Just
maybe
Hard for
another,
me because who parks in somebody else's tree lawn, whether it's a parking area or not? I mean, I could understand parking in your own, but to back up and to park into somebody else's.
Welcome to
Just,
my world.
I know, I think I'm having issues wrapping my head around that kind of
Well,
mentality
don't
where
you
the other
If that whole
part,
neighborhood is.
Don't they know where their
It's
lot
just-
is?
it's just,
Don't they know where their lot is?
that's my
Yeah, it's their lot.
point. If you're gonna park on your own, park on your own, that's,
some neighbors just aren't nice.
huh?
Some neighbors just aren't nice.
I know, I just can't.
Well, you
Can't
can
make
also
everyone
look
be
at,
nice.
what if you have guests over?
Right.
They're gonna have to.
And maybe a more permanent solution that I can think of, that I thought of from the beginning of it, is doing a little bit of research into how much of that widened tree lawn area out there is actually used by these people. I mean, they have to maintain it, is actually used, and how much could we take to have traffic, or, I mean, if the money's there, the expense is there to have those streets widened to where there can be parking on each side of the road, or one side or the other. So, and then the city ordinance stands the way that it is, and we don't have to change anything, they just can't park on that side of the curb.
Yeah, but
Because
then-
we've widened the street and it's now proper to be able to park.
Yeah, but wouldn't that also create such a major expense? Because now you're talking about curbs that they just
Yes.
put in being,
Research, I don't know.
I think Scott had a good idea with, those tree lawns are so wide there. Just cut them down to 5 feet or,
Redoing your street, am I correct? That's redoing your street, your
you
whole
can't, you
street's
can't
out there.
define, you can't define a tree lawn as 3 feet from the sidewalk in this area. It would have to have the curb there to create a tree lawn. You know what I'm saying? Or could you leave the curbs the way they are?
And measure from the sidewalk in that area.
Say it again.
And define the
You're-
tree
you're
lawn.
saying- You're saying move your tree lawn, street, car, tree lawn, sidewalk.
Right, leave the curb the way it is, but then define it on
You're
their
gonna be parked- The
plot.
curb will be on your left always, yeah. And not even put in a curb for that tree lawn.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just write it on the plot that this particular address.
What about the meters? Are they already installed out there on some of the tree lines?
That's my point. None of that would be moved. None of that would be changed. Nothing would move. It would just be on paper.
Or you could have where, I mean, because everywhere out in Oakdale isn't like that, and there are places in another part of town where someone goes there and takes pictures and makes a decision of, is this defined as your tree lawn, is that, and do it on case-by-case basis, but that's a lot of work.
Yeah, we'd have to open.
Oh,
up
somebody doesn't want to do a lot of work, but somebody wants to open up a can of worms and somebody's okay with it.
I think it's just, to be simple,
Well,
Let's just bring it to us.
to be simple about it, they need to, just people that are in violation of not parking the way that it is out there, not parking in the right directions, needs to be something done about that. He wouldn't allow it anywhere else in town.
They have to be on the street.
And,
They're in the tree lawn.
Right, if they're in the
It doesn't
tree lawn,
apply.
there is no right direction.
all of them are
That's what this-
parking
that's what
wrong,
the
Phyllis.
state law-
Everyone who's parked
Okay.
along
You
there is
know,
in violation.
tree lawn next to that are sidewalk areas.
There is
You know,
no
the
law
passenger always gets out on the sidewalk area.
in the tree lawn.
Yeah. Common sense, use a little bit
So,
of common
do me,
sense.
all I'm asking is show me the state law that I can write it on, and my officers will start to do it. Like, I'm not gonna write a ticket that's not on the law books, and I'm not gonna have my officers write a ticket that they're not gonna win in court. And I'm not gonna waste the time of a citizen and say, here's a ticket, go fight this in court, take time away from your job, take time away from your kids, and go to fight a ticket that's null and void. It doesn't
Right.
fly. I can't do that to my officers, and I can't do that to our citizens, more importantly.
Right, Phyllis, I guess the issue maybe that you understand, because you live out there, is everyone on whole city blocks, whether they're parked the right direction or not, even if they are parked the right direction and you see it to be proper, they're still in violation of the city ordinance, the way it's written right now. All of them are. There's not one out there that's parked that's not. They're parked on the wrong side of the curb. That is in violation of
That's
city
very
ordinance.
Every single person.
Right. Every single person. So if they go pick and choose which ones they're writing tickets to, do we really want a city that does that? Do we want to, I don't want
And
my
I'll say my
police
city
department doing
councilwoman
that.
told me to do it.
Well-
I wouldn't do that to you, Ms. Torrance, I wouldn't do that, but
I would do it.
I understand your frustration, but you have to understand our side too.
Years ago,
I'd tell on you.
Yeah.
I'd make sure they all knew it was your fault.
Do you ever park in front of your house, Phyllis? Or do you always park in the alley?
I have a driveway up to my home on the side street. I have curb in front. It is grassed over. Years ago, when I moved there, I dug with a
Okay,
pick and shovel.
question is, does
and
anybody
gravel
park
up.
on that, though?
Huh?
Does anybody park on that?
Not in front of my house.
Okay.
Some of them do down the street and park in front of their house on both sides of the street in the right directions.
What
I
if they
just
parked on,
can't-
what if they
used to
parked on that
be-
side street of yours right there, right by your house? Not on the curb side, but on the non-curb side. If people parked right there before that stop sign, would that be okay? And then what if they parked on the other side? Because now that road is so narrow that people are gonna have to wait. This one's gonna have to wait for this one to get through, so this one can get through, and, because there's no parking regulation right there at all.
Exactly.
So that's where we struggle with this.
Usually people don't park on the side streets as much as these people that are in violation do. And that used to be, years ago, if your car wasn't parked right, the insurance, and it was it, the insurance company wouldn't pay to get fixed. And I know that factually.
Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to speak for or against this, or be a part of this discussion?
Uh-oh.
Might have known.
Yeah, thanks,
Anybody
Ben.
else?
All right, we'll talk about softball.
I'm going, let's do it.
I like that.
I used to live out in Odell, and a lot of those streets do not have any curbing.
They do now.
So how are you going to say you're parked, like you said, if you park up next to the sidewalk, you're not over the curb.
Yeah, there is no curb.
If there's no curb, you can't park over the curb.
Part of them drive over the curb, that's low.
No, that's
That
not
happened.
Phyllis.
Huh?
The concern
What
is the
I'm saying
ones where the
is there
curbs aren't
is
in.
no curb. I lived on Jackson Lane, and there's no curbing out there. So, I mean, and those streets are pretty narrow right in there, at least. I guess just what I'm saying is, what you've got, so it would have been very easy when I lived there. In fact, I did some. Probably parked on the tree lawn, didn't know I was parking on the tree lawn at the time, especially on the side street. So, I think that's what, it'd be nice if you had a nice tall curb.
Everybody.
Every place and say, okay, this is it. Make your life easy and make their life easy. But a lot of places, there are no curbs. There are no sidewalks.
And maybe that's the
Where'd
real
you live
issue
at?
that we need to solve.
Yeah.
I said-
Instead of writing city
There are no
ordinances that aren't
sidewalks.
permanent.
We have sidewalks, curbs, and all those streets now out through there.
Yeah, well, no, you don't. So anyway, what I'm saying is that you're gonna have to write it so that you,
Yes, you do.
it's kind of, it's not gonna be an easy one. Boy, you did open a can of worms.
I think that the issue I have in my position in, when we go rewriting city ordinances, we need to think about 10, 15 years down the road. We're writing a permanent law into place in our city. It's not something temporary that when they go and redo the street later, because we have money to redo these streets, it's going to be null and void because it doesn't take effect anymore. I guess that's the issue that I have now, looking at ordinances that were written 15 years ago, that we're having to pick and pull out of the ordinance book now.
Sometimes you gotta be progressive.
Think further down the road.
If you go out there and look at it, we studied the
Fix
other
the
day quite
roads.
a bit, it's the traffic department, and it looks like to me, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, I mean, I don't live in the town, but I live right beside town, but it looks like to me, when they put those curbs in, they went and asked people, are you parking in front of your house? Because it's so inconsistent. You'll get a 10-inch curb, boom, down to half an inch to an inch, and then 2 car lengths later, back to 10, and then back down. And some of them didn't have a garage to pull into or anything.
The
I see
guy, the guy to answer that's probably right behind you.
Yeah. Bill, but-
He can't hear.
Yeah, but yeah, that's the only thing I consider, did they at one point?
Well, they probably dropped it down so they allowed them to pull in and park there because they considered it parking.
Yeah, that's what
is
I'm
my
wondering.
thought.
I mean, it's, God.
So is the they that you're referring to the state?
Cut their curbs
Well,
down.
It would have been a
City.
decision made by the city at the point when they contracted that curbing in.
Mhm.
They may have just looked at it and said, well, this is a parking spot, let's drop the curb down instead of making it, because some of it's beautiful 10-inch curb, people have a yard, sidewalk, wonderful yard up to that curb, and then their neighbor has got a 2-car length spot that's no curb with gravel on it. And it's almost like somebody, an engineer, designed it that way.
You know,
Oh, they did.
They did.
There it is. They did.
Bill had a lot of insight in, back when all of this was done, when, I mean, from being in this position on different things and places that the ordinances are written in different ways that might put a little more insight into whether or not you want to combine and switch ordinances, or if the solution is to see if the financing's there to fix the streets.
What does that mean? We want to ask Bill to come up and talk?
You need to find out whether
Why?
the city's got the money to fix the streets. That's what you gotta do.
That would be the first place to
Sure,
start.
we do. Take it
But
to
I
the
think that that's the permanent solution. It's my opinion. You know what they say about opinions.
Property owners pay for their own sidewalks.
Right, we're talking about the street, Bill, it's not the sidewalk.
Well, I'm telling you, I put curb in front of my house 2 different times.
And you probably paid to do that, if I had to
Oh,
guess.
absolutely, paid.
Should you have to pay to do that? Do you believe you should have to pay to do that?
I don't. I think.
I don't.
I think there's a
City should
Barrett
put new
law where,
curbs
I think there's a Barrett law years ago.
everywhere in.
That the city could come in and
And they can rip your curb out if they want to, that you
Kinda
just
like
paid
a
to put in there.
tell people to put sidewalks in, they go ahead and put them in, and then they bill the property owner for it years ago. I'm not asking that. I'm asking a simple question about why somebody, now like that pontoon, that big oversized vehicle, is allowed to sit out there, and I think it's no more than a driver ought to be smart enough and courteous, that they're just lazy. The driver wants to get out rather than turn his car a little bit and park in the right direction. So when you're coming down the street, somebody on this side of the street's not going to pull out in front of you all of a sudden that you're not even expecting, because he's parked illegal to begin with.
Can't dispute that.
I agree that.
They wouldn't
that's a
allow it
safety
anywhere
issue.
else in town, I'll tell you.
Chief, do you know if there are other police departments who have had some issues similar to this?
I have not inquired, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I do not know. I guess the only other thing too, and I think somebody alluded to this when we first started talking about it, was do we want, if, with all the issues we have out there in graveling and things like that, my fear is that this conversation gets out too much, that will people on the west end of town say, well, I don't like the fact I can never park in front of my house, I'm going to curb my tree lawn, and this town is a mess with this part's gravel and this part's not. And so I guess that's another thing maybe just to consider too, whenever you talk about
to see if
whether
we
we're going to
can-
allow them to
we
throw
got
gravel
funding.
down
That's what they
and
need to do.
and what areas we allow this to happen in.
Don't worry, I'll write something up. I'll handle it.
Oh, yeah,
I'm sure you will.
I got ideas.
yeah.
Well, it's like your ideas.
Gonna get new curbs and
You want to make a
And
motion?
new roads. All of them. I just
Just
think we should
front
review it all.
just a friend of mine.
I'm not sure where they're going with it. That's all the deal. David, how big a problem is it? How big a problem is it?
It's not very. I mean,
That's what I'm
I
saying
understand,
is-
like I said, I understand there are people that want us to enforce that out there perhaps, but we typically rarely ever have anybody call up and say, hey, this person's parked the wrong way
So
there.
there's
or
really not a big issue, it's
There's
just
not. And like I said,
periodically you have confrontation and you kind of resolve them and things go back to normal, right?
right, and so this is I've been in this capacity now for almost 3 years, and this is the
So
first time I've
without
had.
really fixing the streets, you're not going to do anything, really. I
Right,
mean,
but once again, I also want to keep it fair so that, like I said, if someone on the west end gets a ticket for parking in the tree lawn and goes out there,
Understand?
so that's,
But in the long
I'm just
run,
glad
don't
I
you
heard
think confrontation just periodically is better than a lot of really messed up stuff?
certainly. The only thing too, is law enforcement officers, we like to be able to say, okay,
Sure.
this is what's right.
Cut.
And so, because if you're complaining about him, we want to be able to tell you, you're wrong, or whichever one's right. So that's what's frustrating for us, is that we don't have a clear-cut thing that we can tell these citizens.
I would like somebody to show me on the other end of town that have streets, curbs, grassy areas, tree lawns. I would like to see any there that doesn't have that you're arguing about.
Phyllis,
They're
that's
there.
the problem we're trying to solve here.
Boulevard.
You don't understand. That's what
Oh,
we're
well.
trying to solve, is what
You know
you're
what?
complaining about.
Yeah, what
We see that it's an issue.
never should have been done anyway, you know that.
Do you understand?
I get it.
Do you get it? That's what we're trying to fix here. We agree with everything you're saying and that it's wrong, that we don't write a ticket to these people in Oakdale, but we do write it to the people on the west end of town. And that's what Mike's trying to fix. That's the can of worms that's being opened, is what you're saying that you agree with. We don't agree that they don't enforce those parking laws out there in Oakdale either.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
See, the big problem, because you are our councilwoman out there, everybody's gonna come to you if he starts throwing tickets at every single person out there that's parking illegally, because nobody has a place to park.
Now, come on, people. When we were talking about putting curb in and all, you go down there, the main trouble probably, quite possibly, that has developed over time, people no longer have one car, they have a half a dozen.
And that's just part of life. We
Yeah,
have
and I
multiple
like
cars
that.
because there's multiple drivers in the family. Now, if I have 3 people
Yeah.
in my family and I no longer have a place to park because the curb is out there, my tree lawn is now, even though I have gravel in my tree lawn and we put a curb up, now you're telling me I have to park on the street on the other side of the curb, but there's no place to park there because it would impede traffic. Where do I park?
And if you park in the neighbor's tree lawn,
If I park in the neighbor's tree lawn
Whose
because they
tree lawn
don't
is it?
have a curb, should I be allowed to do that?
Come
Those
over
are,
the top of their curb, doesn't go.
no,
up
if they
there.
don't have a curb, you're not following. The problem is, say, the curb is on this side of the street, but on this side of the street, they don't have a curb. So I can no longer park on my tree lawn over here, where I used to park, because city put up a curb. But I can't park on the street because there's not enough room. So I decide, well, I'm gonna go park over here on the tree lawn because there's no curb, and that's okay. But that's not my property. That's your house. You know what I mean? Are you okay with that?
Nobody.
These are hypothetical. Would you be okay with that?
With what?
If I parked in your tree lawn because you don't have a curb there?
Do it.
Well, it would never happen to me because
It's a yes or
I'm
no.
not-
It does happen to
I
people out
take too
there.
much pride about property to do something like that. No, it would never exist.
So I think this is gonna be a longer discussion than just tonight.
I think so too.
I'd like to make a motion, we table it and discuss it again. at a
I would
later
second
time.
that motion.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Took up a little longer than what I expected.
I honestly thought
Yeah.
it would take a lot more.
Roll call.
Well,
Do we need to?
obviously, we're not gonna be able to come to a conclusion tonight, so
No, but-
everybody needs to just go home and
Something to
think.
think about.
If any of you have any questions about ordinances, I can look up, and I'll hit up Ms. Leffler here. We'll look up ordinances for you and try to get you copies of those if you don't already have them, the things that maybe we see that we already try to enforce out there, or that are enforceable that we don't enforce, quite honestly.
Yeah,
I would love a
that would
copy
be good.
of all,
Easy.
I would like a copy of all the ordinances.
Yes.
That pertain to any kind of laws that the police are able to ticket within the city. Yeah, that's what I would like.
It's actually online. It is easy to find.
It's
too.
section-
If you
It's
look up
hard,
City of
I don't
Peru,
have a computer or internet. Can you get me a hard copy and a binder, please?
He's got,
I can do that.
No smartphone either.
a smartphone.
You're welcome.
I
You
don't.
don't have a car? Walk to your,
I don't have a car because I don't have any place to park.
see?
I live in Oakdale.
park in my tree lawn.
It's okay. We'll get you a hard copy of that, Scott.
Stephanie, is there a way
I
also,
understand. We will get you a hard copy.
is there a way also to check with the mayor's office, even to know if there is a portion of the budget that could address?
To check the budget?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll need to see the numbers on that too.
Easy.
Good luck with that.
Like are you asking me for a budget? Like, that's obviously not going to be our building department budget, traffic?
Traffic, yeah, probably street department budget area.
Street and traffic would be, yeah, on what pertaining to that kind of work. I can tell you, the traffic department, we barely cover the signs and the paint the road, but.
Right.
Street.
Street?
Actually covers hard paving.
Okay.
But that would be to fix curbs out there, that would be something we would, plan for a future budget and build in, because that would be extremely costly.
I believe at the last budget meeting, we had $500,000 set aside along with the grant money for the next year to do paving. And that
Right.
is not going to take, if we did Oakdale, then that's the only paving that would get done here.
I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, but I think Mayor Greer said that basically there was zero paving done in Peru this year.
This
but
year.
With the expectation of doing all that.
And they were doing that because of the utility work in the streets and all that. So for next year,
Right. And I think that a lot of that, probably also know what you're really asking for is with that utility work and the digging that they're doing, and I'm not even saying anything bad about
All
utilities.
right.
I don't ever talk bad about utilities. When are they gonna be done digging? When are, all of that stuff, so that we're not redoing things shortly after?
Depends on which one, next one breaks.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Great.
I second it. Hey,
Yes.
thank you.
Thanks.